Hey there, YouTube, is your boy Lipid out here with another reaction video. Today we got Do Bad Reviews Kill Companies? MKBHD. Let's get right into it, shall we? Hit it. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I thought I'll be doing an MKBHD reaction in 2024, but here we are. It's controversy, so let's get into it.
All right. I review a lot of products.
Yes.
Right. I've talked about hundreds, maybe thousands of products at this point. But as many videos as I've made about products, there are way more products out there in the world that exist. So the process of selecting which products to even review in the first place is like an art form to itself.
Fair.
Most products are just meh. They're fine. Like they exist, they get made, they're fine, whatever. So they have to reach a certain level of interest or being really good to even be considered for a review, or sometimes really, really bad. So there's been a lot of interesting discourse lately on this topic. There will be, some negative reviews, and then a company will eventually go out of business, and then the internet poses the question, do bad reviews kill companies? Do bad reviews kill companies?
This depends. I think this is a bit more of a difficult question to answer, but I think my perspective on this is, if you take the question itself, do bad reviews kill companies? Let's say you're a new startup, you got a really good product, and suddenly like an army of reviewers basically give you a bad review because they wanted to give you a bad review, like maliciously. You can argue if that company closes, yes, a bad review would have killed that company. But you can also argue people who've genuinely used the product, and if it was a good product, they'd basically say, nah, you capping. They basically just come and tell you, nah, the product is actually genuinely useful. And as more people try it, word to word should overcome most of like reviewer-based, just opinionation, in my opinion. But at the same time, what's the likelihood of that happening? What's more likely? Every reviewer giving you a bad review because they felt like you didn't deserve success? Or your product is bad? In the latter case, you may actually deserve to let the company die. If it is really a bad product and it gets so here's the thing, I don't think that's a bad review. Then it becomes a good review, because if it's a review on a bad product and it's genuine, that's a good review on a bad product. That's just me, but basically I don't think there's much leeway here on that thought process. I don't know what you can tell me to convince me otherwise, but I'm willing to listen.
Or do bad products kill companies?
Obviously, the second one, 100%.
I do have a lot of thoughts. So two of the biggest examples that have been pointed to, especially on Twitter, were the Fisker Ocean review that I did and the Humane AI pin from a couple days ago. So the Fisker saga was pretty well documented, but in case you missed it,
it's a silly looking car.
I had a pretty horrible experience with it, documented it, published the review on the Autofocus
I've seen this
channel.
review.
And then a few months later, the entire company appears to be on life support.
Which, to the point, I will have to admit, I saw that review, and I will say this, from what I understood from what Marquez said, which is basically, I'm trusting his opinion that at least he's coming from the perspective of objective truth, and he's subjectively putting in, would he want that product? And in this case, he is right, in my opinion, because, in my opinion, it is a car company. It is a car that you are selling. If your car is unsafe and has features that, would be like a minimum requirement in other cars, then you don't deserve to be selling cars to people if they can kill you. Just my opinion, okay? That's just it.
Likely filing for bankruptcy soon. And now this startup, Humane, they dropped their first product, this pin. I review it. It's not super positive. A lot of people are saying the same thing. And I don't even think Humane is going anywhere, by the way. But I think their thing.
Okay, sure.
And I don't even think Humane is going anywhere, by the way. But I think there is some pretty simple logic we can use to decipher what the real danger is to these companies, which is, do you still get a bunch of negative reviews and then die as a company if the product is actually really good? But
that's my point. That's exactly what I started the preface with, which is no. More often than not, no. There's going to be reviewers who tell you the truth and basically say it's a good product. And when people realize there's a disconnect between reviews, they're going to go and check it out for themselves. Let them come to their own conclusion, right?
Let's back up for a second. What is a review? little pet peeve of mine is I think people misuse or overuse that word a lot. But a review is just somebody uses a product and then just delivers their impressions on whether they think it's any good or not, how well it actually worked. And if their honest opinion is if it's good, then that's the review. If it's bad, that's the review. That's basically it.
I agree, but there is a slight little tangent line I need to draw there, which is it depends. Yes, that is what a review is at its core. I agree. But let's take that same logic and apply it to, let's say, I don't know, a company that sells a phone, for example. And when a company sells a phone, they're going to say, oh, we got this camera system. And they're going to give a whole bunch of marketing applause. Be like, oh, it looks all these fancy stuff and all this kind of thing. And within reviewers, which, you can kind of name a few. I'm not going to name any names. You can have a reviewer be objectively correct by simply reciting the marketing lines that they've been given. And subjectively, they could say, oh, I enjoyed the product. In this case, it is an objective and subjective opinion in line with what that company wanted the reviewer to say, and they're paid for it. In that case, that is a opinionated review that does not reflect a normal person's approach to the product. The reason why I trust Marquez in his products is that he is not afraid to look at a product and say, this is a good product or this is a bad product. From when he uses the product and he thinks, okay, most people are not going to use it like that, or most people would have a use for that. I trust that opinion because most of his reviews, if not all of his reviews, are objective in that regard, and his subjective opinion is of value to me. However, it is difficult to say that a review is both objectively true and subjectively valid if that objective truth is in line with what that company actually said about the product, and the subjective truth is basically that person's own personal opinion and basically saying, oh, but I don't need to take the opinion of what most people will use the product for, which is where it gets murky. That's a gray area in my assessment, because what's subjective to you is not going to be subjective to me. And an objective opinion can also be kind of twisted, because you can basically recite what the company is saying and still be objectively correct. You're honest. But that doesn't mean it's true. And that's the devil's in the details. It's like saying, oh, I got this 50 megapixel camera and it's got this insane zoom and it works so well. Right? That is fine. If a company tells you to say that, fine. Okay, sure. The moment you then say, oh, this is the best camera I've ever used as a subjective opinion, you're blurring the lines a little. I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me this 16 megapixel camera, which actually has bigger pixels per size, which technically allows more light to enter with a better image sensor, might not be as good as this 50 megapixel one. And you, in your subjective opinion, you're saying, hey, I think the 50 MP is better because the number is better. And you're going to get more people to believe that fact. That's where it becomes kind of a 50-50. In essence, I agree. Yes, a review is basically talking about a product. But the objective and subjective component on it are way too broadly defined, in my opinion. I think if you subscribe to a particular tech review channel, it is for either A, the entertainment value of how they put the product on the table, and B, it's for the subjective opinion that you actually care about. Those are the two reasons why you subscribe. That's it. And if you lose one or the other, most people just don't really pay attention to that, that review or that opinion. And you might only need to make this mistake once. If one reviewer sells out once, people aren't going to trust that opinion because they say, well, you've done it once before. How do I know you're not doing it now again? That's the problem.
And so I've been an advocate of good independent reviews for what feels like forever now. But the thing about reviews...
And I'm sorry for pausing it here because I'm really passionate on this point because I really wanted to buy, and this is from personal experience, I wanted to buy a Framework laptop. And I know I looked at Linus's review of the laptop, and kudos to Linus when he says he's invested in the company, he has to have someone else review the product. But there's always a question in the back of my mind, which is like, hey, is he inputting something into that review? I trust he's not. And from my experience, I don't think in other reviews, he's not disingenuous. He might have some problems culturally with the company, but I don't think he's disingenuous or he's lied outright, which I think solid person, he's doing his best. So I think that's my perspective on Linus. And Framework is a good product, but I will not trust a reviewer who's obviously financially vested in the company to tell me about the product. It's like MKBHD and Ridge Wallet, I think, right? He has a Ridge Wallet, I think, membership, which is basically why I won't trust his opinion on that, because he's financially, invested in that company, which is my point. And it really is interesting from the stock market perspective, and which is, I think, coming up. Should reviewers disclose if they have a, and this is something I've thought about. Should reviewers disclose the fact that they're invested in a company if they do a review on the company? Either way. Let's say to make money, they give a good review and they're not disclosing they're invested in the company. That's not right. But if they give a bad review and they're shorting the same company, wouldn't they also need to give that, hey, by the way, I invested in this company? They should disclose that, which I don't think is happening in a couple of cases I've noticed on YouTube. I've been sniffing it, but I'm not really sure. But I think that's also valid. Because ultimately one point is true. YouTubers right now, genuine, solid, like top of the line reviewers, have much more impact than most media outlets when it comes to reviewing products, by far.
They're not honest, then they're basically useless. Yeah. I really strongly feel like everything that comes from a review, all the consequences and everything that comes around it, everything in the world of an ecosystem of reviews depends on the review being truthful and actually honest.
That's a problem, though, isn't it? It's like, yes, I agree, but depends to what degree of honesty, isn't it? It's like you could technically be honest by just repeating the marketing material. Objectively, you're like, hey, I'm just copying exactly what they told me to say. That's objectively correct. But then what you want to exactly say is your opinion on that marketing material as your assessment of the product should take a higher precedence than you basically just, spewing out the same marketing or, the jargon that they're putting in. That's the difference. That's the review component, in my mind.
About things. So I'll just give an example. I've told this story before, but years ago, I remember I reviewed the first Razer phone when it came out. So Razer, gaming company,
I remember this review.
Stuff. They're getting into smartphones for the first time, so they made a phone
which looks
that
sick,
appeals
the two
to the
front
same
speakers.
target demographic of gamers. So it had a bunch of upsides and downsides. Obviously, gaming-focused features. So it's got like front-facing speakers and a high refresh rate.
I remember this one as well.
The battery was pretty big, but also the camera was weak. And I remember the vibration motor was horrible, and I remember calling it out. I remember saying this.
Also, the vibration motor in this phone, trash. Straight trash. I'm going to call myself so you can hear this.
Ugh. Why do I not remember this? Okay, huh. Fair enough. That's just trash.
It sounds
fair enough.
broken, but it sounded that way out the box since day one. So that is the Razer phone.
Just one of the worst vibration motors I've ever experienced in a new phone.
Right.
So, okay, fast forward a year, right? I'm at a briefing. It's in New York City. It's for the Razer Phone 2. And so they're walking me and some other people through this new phone they've made, and they've got a bunch of changes. It's got a glossy back. They added wireless charging now. The logo glows, and like the speakers are better and all this stuff. And they're talking us through it. And then the guy turns to me and he says, and Marquez, you got to try the new vibration motor in this phone.
Oh.
And it's such a niche thing, but sure enough, I try it, and it's way better. And that's, to me, that's a big part of what reviews are all about.
Right, and that constructive criticism goes a long way to improving the product, which I think is the gold standard of any review. Kudos. That is solid. That is true. I agree with that. Yes.
That honest feedback turned into actually action for the company to make it better. So people who bought the first one knew what they were getting into, and people who bought the second
knew what was
actually
improving.
Benefited from that. So that's number one. Honesty, obviously, super important.
Yes.
But the second thing is these reviews are also definitely for the people that are watching them and consuming them. So you've probably been in the situation when you're about to buy something and you just want to double check. So you hop on YouTube, you search it up, watch a couple videos about the product just to make sure you're not missing anything.
There it is. Devil's in details there. If you're going to buy a product, you're not going to just watch one review. And I can tell this personally. If I'm buying a phone, if I'm buying a laptop, I'm going to check like 4 or 5 reviews. General consensus is what I'm looking for. It's like, generally across the board, is it agreed that it's a good product or a bad product? Which is the point. Which is when I see people pointing at Marquez, he's the easiest person to point at because he's the biggest of the bunch. But that isn't right.
And then you either decide on the moment or later that day, like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to buy it. We've all been there. That's the reason. That's exactly how this YouTube channel started. Like my first ever tech video was reviewing a laptop, but specifically, I bought the laptop with my allowance money in high school, and I found a Windows Media Center remote in the PCI slot that wasn't in any of the other reviews.
Oh.
So the first thing I decided to do was talk through it in a video so that anyone else who bought the laptop after me would know about it. So you're thinking about buying a thing.
First of all, I didn't even realize that was what was it the first video. That is actually kind of sick. Like having a remote as part of the laptop. Okay, sick. Okay. Well,
you watch a couple reviews of the thing, you learn everything you need to know, boom, success. But here's where it gets a little bit interesting. I do have a bit of an extra dimension on my hands with these videos because I know that there's no way that every single person watching a review of every single product is one of those people who was considering buying it.
Right.
I get that comment
right.
actually in person all the time. I watch the reviews even though I'm not buying any of this stuff. So I know that a lot of people, in fact, most people watching these videos are actually just here to watch an interesting, informative, good video in general.
Right.
An entertaining video.
Right.
And so
well,
the way that
entertaining in one sense, but I think I'm there for the aesthetics as well. Because, bro, I mean, that color science and those red cameras, clean. They're clean. Yeah, I gotta give it that.
I satisfy those things is much more subjective, I think. Like, everyone has a different way they do it. Everyone has a different target demographic.
Which is my point. Which is like, look, with a review, you're going to have the objective truth and the subjective opinion, and both are equally important on how you address them. Always. Which I think is going to be like the paradoxical approach, because you kind of have to be subjective in some items, knowing how it applies to not just yourself. That's the most important one. It isn't just about you. You basically have to put the broader people in mind and then speak your mind, which is kind of... I don't think a lot of people could do it. Because I think most people are wired to kind of look out for their best interest, but not just... It really is in service to the public, in a weird way of putting it. Yes, because you are educating a lot of people. Hey, this product's really good. You should probably go and try it out. I remember when the M1 MacBooks came out and when everyone was raving about it. And yeah, I'm recording this on an M1 MacBook Pro. The reason I did buy it was because it's a damn good product. And it really, like, shout out for the fact that this is a complete divergence. This is my first MacBook ever. Like, which is insane to me, which is like my first MacBook is an Apple Silicon MacBook. I've never had an Intel MacBook. So for me, this is now the standard I'm holding the MacBooks against. But the point is, I trusted Marquez's input, review, and his recommendations for the products that he reviewed. So in that case, I hold Marquez. I hold Austin. I hold, Dave 2D in really high regard, because their opinions really help me understand where they're coming from, and then I get to have the expression of reviewing actual marketplace reviews in Amazon or in other online retailers, going to the store and then talking to them, and then you come to an opinion yourself before you put that much money on the table. That's my opinion, because you need to do due diligence for the products you purchase. 100%. Some people can tell you it's good, but ultimately you're the one who's going to deal with the product and work with it. So you need to know everything there is to know about the product which affects you before you make that purchase. That is a customer's responsibility. It is the public responsibility of the reviewer to give them the best possible, cleanest version of that information. Period. That is it. That is their role. And I think most reviewers have forgotten that fact. Like Kotaku and all those other gaming video websites, forget about it. They've forgotten their role.
But that's a little bit of a new dimension. So then I think if we go back to the original question, so can a video kill a company? I'll use the Humane and Fisker examples specifically. The Fisker Ocean was a terrible car. It is a terrible car. I've reviewed about 40, 50 different cars in the past few years, made videos about many of them. This is the first one where I genuinely couldn't wait to be done driving it. It just had tons of problems, bugs, missing features, safety issues. It's just bad, right? So I review the thing. I give people what I feel is a fair assessment that also doubles as a warning not to buy this bad car. So hopefully it's entertaining and informative to the majority of people who weren't thinking about buying the car, but also that it is as honest as possible with the people who are. And maybe a week or two later, the company's stock price is plummeting to an all-time low, and they appear to be filing for bankruptcy.
I'm not really sure about the American stock markets, but don't they have a rule if you're less than $1 for the share price, you kind of get kicked off from the stock exchange? Am I not wrong?
Going nuts, which I guess I get it. Obviously it makes a nice headline, this this review came out and it killed this company. This review bankrupted
Which is kind
all
of like
Fisker, maybe. Like there was a whole Morning Brew thread on how Fisker handled this video so poorly that they're now going to go bankrupt
even know
because
that
of it.
fair
Also,
enough.
there were whole stock investments themed channels saying this was like a paid promoted attack against the Fisker
This is where I go back to shorting the stock situation. Depends. I really don't know.
stock price. Like
really
it got
don't know.
pretty crazy. But did one review kill the entire company?
No, absolutely not.
I would say to zoom out a bit. I think it's important to zoom out a bit,
Right.
actually. First of all, I was not the only one to review
Right.
the car, not even close.
Which is the most
and so
important
yes,
point, right?
the
Yeah.
stock price
Agreed.
did drop after my video, but the stock was in free fall for many, many months before my video too. And if you zoom out on YouTube or in the car review space in general, I was far from the only person saying these things about the car for all of these months.
Right.
Many other reviewers had been having a plethora of issues, even stuff that I didn't
It's the
have
general consensus
with
that
this
matters,
thing.
bro.
Actually, I feel like
100%.
that might be the easiest way to tell if a review is honest or not. Like, we're all reviewing the same product, basically. If we all have the same thing, so we're all going to find a lot of the same things. We're all eventually going to have a lot of the same upsides, downsides. If there are issues, they may eventually surface. So yeah, they're probably going to agree with each other. A bunch of honest
Right.
reviews. They'll all say a lot of the same stuff. Oh, and also in the U.S., the stock price. There's this thing where if a stock, what is it? If it's below a dollar
it is?
for
Okay.
however many days
I've
in a
heard
row,
about
then they'll
this.
get a warning that they may be delisted, and they have 6 months to get the stock price back
Above
up
a dollar,
over
right?
$1.
Yeah. I've heard about this.
And
Wow.
Fisker had just received that notice right around the same time that I think right before my video came out.
Oh, the
actually.
killing blow
And if
then,
you're an
right?
investor, you're
Fair
looking
enough.
at that. That's the type of stuff that really tanks the
Yeah.
stock price if you're
Yeah.
asking me. And if you're asking me personally, I literally don't care what the stock price is of any company, of any product I review. I just don't care.
Okay.
And so if I'm talking about a product, that will never have anything to do with what I say about the product. And I hope that's not true about other people either. And I shouldn't even have to say this. I'm not invested in any companies that I cover. It's
okay.
just a matter of trying to make an informative, educational,
Okay,
and
I'm
honest
glad he said that. He's not investing in any companies that he covers. That clears up. I was like, clear the air. All right, okay. Fair enough.
video review.
Then I got
That's
nothing
my
else to talk
goal.
about. It's
My
like, yeah,
only
he's right.
goal is to do that, and I don't have any duty to any of the companies whose products I cover.
Good.
It is only
Good.
to the people
Very
watching
good.
the videos. So now, okay, fast forward to pretty recently, the Humane AI pin comes out.
Okay.
A lot of the same stuff, right? Like this pin has a lot of missing promises. The things it doesn't actually do super well. The battery life is bad. It overheats. The laser projector is kind of bad. Like the list just goes on
Okay.
and on. I tried to
Seen
be
the review
as
for
fair
this,
as
actually, yeah.
possible and as informative as possible, but I'm also absolutely not about to sugarcoat or leave anything out to protect any company's $700 device with a monthly subscription. Not into that. But yet, even still, there are
They
some
have it is $700 and it's $20+ a month for a subscription. No.
threads
That is not
blowing
worth
up
it.
saying it's extra bad what I did to this poor company. And maybe you could argue
Wait, $700? You could buy a Pixel Fold on like eBay for that kind of money, bro. Why would you buy a Pixel? And you can do it better on a phone anyway.
This is the biggest channel that covered it. Maybe there's some extra impact there. But again, I would say to zoom out. I just zoom out again. I was not the first actually even to cover the Humane pin,
yeah,
but I'm also
fair.
far from the only one to talk about it. And even a little inside baseball, when a product comes out that's this notable or this bad, which isn't very often, a lot of reviewers it's stressful. You want to make sure you get everything right. A lot of us are literally trading
Right.
notes and like trying to figure out, like when mine died in 2 hours and overheated on my chest without doing
Yeah.
anything, I thought it was like an issue with
a defective adjust your unit, and you want to check in with all those other people as well, which is smart.
Fine.
Compare notes.
And I
fair
was
enough. Fair
texting
enough.
a couple others.
Yeah.
And sure enough,
That's
they're
a
having
good
the same things
educated
happen to
principle
them.
as well.
So
That's nice.
We're all trying to be as
Professional
thorough as
principle.
possible
Really good.
and making sure our reviews are truthful. And so that's how you get a bunch of truthful reviews. Now you could argue, and I think the guy on Twitter did, that the packaging was too clickbaity. And I totally get
Yeah,
that.
okay.
But I also stand by our
He's objectively
title and
right.
thumbnail,
Worst
and
product he's ever
especially
reviewed. That's
the end of
$100.
the
He's
title.
right.
But keep in mind the dimension that most of the people who see this in their feed and their subscription box have never heard of the Humane AI pin.
And this is where I give respect, because this goes back to the point I mentioned. Yes, you are not putting it from just your perspective. You have to put it from the perspective of people who never heard about this company, and you have to tell them, is it worth looking at? Yes or no? And they're coming to you for the review. So that responsibility is yours to bear. Fair enough. I understand that.
First time they hear about it and they click on it, hopefully, and then they're delivered with a thoughtful, well-considered, balanced, and honest.
And I think that's fair, because when I saw that video, I was like, bro, I would have just called that thing garbage, 100%. And look, I understand they're trying something in a new space, but they're not ready, which is just the truth, bro. That you can do everything they're doing on a phone faster and better and get more information, more accurate information, better. And you don't have to pay a subscription for your phone. Like, it doesn't make sense to use the product. The product doesn't make sense.
An entertaining,
there's no market
video
for it.
That happens to be a review. So look, I've reviewed a lot of bad products in my day. You might remember some of them. You might remember the Dyson headphones, or the Red Hydrogen 1, or the Pixel Slate, or the HTC U Ultra. The list goes on. But one thing has definitely been clear and consistent throughout all of this, which is anytime the company goes under, you don't get those bad reviews without the product being bad to begin with. Obviously.
That is a fair.
I have a massive amount of respect and appreciation for people and groups of people who are actually making new stuff, like building products.
Right, which is one of the points I still want to reiterate, which is basically with Humane, I agree the product might not have a place in the market, but respect them anyways for still trying to put a product on the market. Though I think their vision is a bit cloudy, I think. It's because you don't have a very specific target audience you're targeting, and even then, your product does not make economic feasible sense in most cases. Like, as I understand, $700 plus $20 or $30 a month is just, nah, bro. Nah. This is not going to sell.
The hard part at the end of the day, and we get to get a whole bunch of new exciting things that might change the world, and that's really exciting. But my reviews, technically, are not for them. All that any honest review actually does is just accelerate whatever was already going on.
I agree with that, yes.
Think of it that way. Okay, thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
He's right. He's absolutely right. Basically, I think same line points, on the same trajectory. It's one of the reasons why I think Marcus is one of the best. There's no question of it. It's like he's I think I can say it fairly. He's the undisputed king of tech reviews. Apple even recognizes it, which is like, bro, like, man's up there. There's no cap, and I think his integrity was brought into question, which I think, I'll be honest, I think it's envy. Not from Marquez, but from every other major media company just trajectorying at him, basically saying you shouldn't have that kind of power, which is I think the feeling I'm getting from a lot of that those X threads basically, which I think is which I don't think is right, because I'll be honest, it's a nice refreshing change to have someone with an honest opinion, basically giving their opinion and having it being heard over all those media companies that have paid advertising. I will take Marquez any day of the week. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you beautiful bastards in the next one. Peace. Take care. Nice.